Hey folks, this is Bob Reese with the Guides Forecast. I am having a conversation with Mike Hazen of ODF&W. He has the good fortune of working for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife based at the Gnat Creek Hatchery, which many of us travel by uh, many times over the course of the season if you're a fishing guy that lives in Oregon City. Mike, thanks for joining us today. Start off with a brief introduction and let us particularly know how long you've been working for the agency.
Uh, Well, my name is Mike Hazen. I've been with the agency for, let's see, 20. I've worked at various hatcheries throughout throughout the state. Started out as a seasonal South San Yam hatchery down in Sweet Home. And I worked at Nehalem Hatchery for 11 and a half years and got a lot of experience with the, Steelhead program down there. And then I've been up here since 2016 on Gnat Creek, and um, I kind of promoted into this position here. So, but a lot different here. Not pretty laid back. Not as many. Not a good sized production of fish, but nothing. We don't have any like spawning, or we don't have adult collection this year. We don't have an adult trap. A lot of people think we was asking us for like trap numbers and stuff. We don't have that. The fishery here is just a put and take fishery. So um, whatever comes in the creek, we want them all 100% harvested. So
Wow, that's interesting. I claim to know a lot about the agency, but I didn't know that, so we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. But I went to Mount Hood, graduated at Mount Hood Community College, graduated with their fisheries program in '88. Did you go through Mount Hood as well?
oh yeah, yep,
Okay.
2000. Oh man, yeah, 2002 I think is when I graduated. So
Oh, awesome.
1988. Who was the instructors then?
It was Graybill and Foster was the fish biologist, and you probably had Graybill at the time, didn't you?
No, I had Todd Hanna and Tom Lister.
Oh, I'll be darned. Well,
Yeah,
Tom,
I heard about them, but yeah, it's changed.
yeah, Tom Worcester. I'm still friends with him. He was my chemistry teacher at Central Catholic High School. So,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah,
No
yeah.
kidding. Yeah, how's he
So,
doing?
well, I haven't talked to him real recently, but I still see him on Facebook, and I think he's doing
Yeah,
well. So, yeah,
nice.
funny how
Yeah,
things paths
yeah.
cross that way. So, well, excellent. Well, you got a great body of knowledge. What is your position at Nat Creek there? Your title?
I am the assistant manager here. Kind of oversee the day-to-day operations. We have 950,000 spring Chinook that we raise, and from basically eyed egg to release, and then smoke a year. It's a year of production, and then we have our 40,000 winter steelhead that we bring over for a couple months from Big Creek, and just kind of overlooking the fish feeding programs and that kind of thing. So it's pretty laid back hatchery. It's pretty nice. Pretty
Yeah.
nice. A lot of that, they built this facility back in the 1950s. They were really thinking. I mean, the water intake's phenomenal. We don't have any fish disease problems, unlike a lot of hatcheries. So, um, which is nice. We actually have Barrier Falls, which I can't remember what year it was. I want to say I want to think it was the 1960s. They kind of they they dynamited out a section of the creek up here to prevent, kind of created a waterfall fish barrier, and so we don't have adult fish going above our intake, carrying fish, diseases and stuff like that. So um, we're very fortunate there. Probably what's really unique to this facility is that, I mean, you won't see that anywhere else but here, and um, so we have nice, we have clean water, with the watershed, is the water comes from the state forest land, which it is not like Nehalem. The watershed was like an industrial, forest. A lot of logging going on up there, so we had a lot of silt and things like that, runoff and all that. Where here it's nice, clean water, stays cool, shaded, and stuff like that. So just really unique to this facility.
Wow. Well, I was on the task force that was directed to prioritize, for lack of a better term, what hatcheries would get basically on put on the chopping block. And Gnat Creek was never in question. It's in Norfolk, Nehalem. I think may have actually been in question at one time, but you know, talk about unique features and what the benefits are to Oregon's hatchery system. Norfolk Nehalem, of course, has the handicap ramp, which is great. Has the Norfolk Nehalem hotline. Anglers are willing to stick up for unique situations, and to have a hatchery that is theoretically more efficient than other hatcheries in the sense you don't have to be treating, some of the things we learned through that process is, for example, Cedar Creek Hatchery on the Sandy system has to be treated. Their fish have to be treated with fungicide for a lot more often than they used to have to because the watershed itself is being compromised due
Yeah.
to the incredible amount of urban growth that's happening in the Sandy system.
Yeah, and we have, that's the thing about here too, is we have that barrier falls, so we don't have the disease issues. Plus, we have the cooler water. Like a lot of, like, that's kind of one of the, in the future, that's kind of be one of the challenging things is going to be the warming water temperatures, and we're seeing that throughout the hatcheries in the state. I mean, all it takes is a couple degrees average warmer, and it starts inviting more hosts of disease problems and things like that. So and then the fact that we have three full-time employees here raise 950,000 fish, and or over 1 million fish, and that it's very efficient. It's a very efficient hatchery. I think I might have heard something where a cost per smolt, I think Gnat Creek was it's like on the right at the, if not the top or close to the top facility when it comes to that kind of thing. So so when you're looking at overall efficient hatcheries in the state that are efficient, we're right there. So
Oh,
budget wise, I don't. And I think, and then another thing too, in the summertime, the only issues we have is we get low. When you get down in September into like early October, you get that bottleneck of start running out of water. And then as their fish are growing, you're running out of water. So now you got that bottleneck of deprived oxygen levels and things like that. And we can do that here because of our water temperatures and stuff like that. So
wow. Yeah. I mean, there's so
we can
much
raise
money.
a lot of fish on a little bit of water.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, and yeah, and a pretty tight budget too.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the issues with Cedar Creek is they were spending so much money on fungicide that they had to buy cheaper fish food as their budget allowed, and then that more economical fish food translated into a lower smolt to adult ratio. So it's just there's a lot of things to juggle, and water quality, of course, as you and I learned in fishery school, water temperature has everything to do with it. Myself, along with a lot of the conservation organizations I've worked with, the Steelheaders and Northwest Guides and Anglers Association, we've fought hard for protections on state forest lands, and most recently with the private forest accord. So it's great to know that some of those efforts are paying dividends with high quality water that's coming to that hatchery there. So, and good work on your part for the agency's part for making that a successful situation as well. So curious, you say you're really just a rearing facility. No, I didn't realize that either, is that there's no egg take that happens at Gnat Creek. You mentioned that you get your steelhead smolts 40,000 from Big Creek, where I assume maybe you get the spring Chinook eggs. I assume they're probably transferred as eyed eggs from maybe the Clascanine hatchery. Is that right?
We get them transferred at eyed eggs, but they are from the Willamette Valley hatcheries. So like mainly South Santiam, Marion Forks. Since I've been here, I've had eggs from Willamette, McKinsey. It just kind of depends on what hatchery, what returns are coming back, what the egg takes are like, but it's been predominantly South Santiam eggs, and we get, 970,000 a million eyed eggs. And we said we just rear them from eyed eggs to smolt, and we truck. Oh, spring Chinook production is a little different. We truck out. We just end of October we truck out 350,000 or 375,000 smolt, or they wouldn't be smolts or fingerlings, down to blind slough net pens, and then so they're reared down there, and then And then just look at my notes here. Then we got, then we started last couple years direct releasing fish down a blind slough because they're predominantly for this. It's a safe program, so they're for the off-channel gillnet, which you're very familiar with. The off-channel gillnet program, which is working really well. And those guys down there catching a lot of fish for commercial entities and stuff like that. And then the other 500, I don't know, 200 and it's been different. Like some years we've been doing 500,000, 600,000 direct release in a Gnat Creek. So, huge smolt releases into this tiny little creek of spring Chinook. And like you're talking about before, that's kind of like the main fishery here in the springtime. So it gets some years there's a lot of fish in that creek, and it looks like something like Alaska, something you'd see on TV, like in Alaska or National Geographic or something down there. And guys are just down there, having a good old time. And a lot of enforcement issues, unfortunately. You can see every fish in the creek, and so there's been snagging and pitchforks and you name it. I've heard bleach. I heard a story about 5 or 6 years ago. I was talking to one of the state police guys, and I guess that Big Creek, they dump in bleach in the creek and that kills all the fish. And there's a guy down there picking them up with nets and stuff as they're floating down. And just see, you name it. I mean, gill net, illegal gill nets and stuff. And that's kind of interesting, but there's still plenty of guys doing it legally too. So, and there's a tidewater fishery now down there, anchor fishing, trolling and stuff. So
that's Tidewater of Tidewater or blind slough, that is, or
yeah, blind slough, kind of the lower, maybe I don't know, half a mile of Gnat Creek is kind of like a tidewater situation, like you'd see like on the coast or something like that. And then it kind of flows into a slough, which flows, these lower Columbia islands down here kind of create all these sloughs and stuff. And so you get fish coming up through there. And
wow.
That's a pretty good sport fishery there too. I mean, it's not heavily crowded, and guys are coming down, and now guys are starting to bobber fish the little tidewater, like you would in the fall and stuff too. So that's pretty cool. A lot of opportunity down there for spring Chinook, and in the creeks too. Big Creek, most of the fish that used to go up spring Chinook go up Big Creek. They actually are, a lot of them are strays from Gnat Creek, and they get really good runs there. But the last couple of years actually started releasing smolts into Big Creek too. So I see Big Creek as going to be a really good sport fishery here next couple of years. It already is, but it's going to be, when those fish start returning, it's going to be pretty good. So
wow. Well, if there's anything that's lacking in the state with the decline of the Clackamas and Sandy fisheries, it is public access to spring Chinook, especially for bank anglers. I mean, my first jobs out of the program in Mount Hood, we're not working in the hatchery, but creel census there on the Clackamas rivers and Columbia and Willamette rivers. And to see the change in the fisheries, particularly in the Clackamas, has been pretty disappointing for, people that we want to recruit into the fishery. We all kind of started as bank fishermen before we got the flavor and the passion and the finances to start buying boats,
right.
We've lost kind of that gateway opportunity for a lot of anglers. And it sounds like Gnat Creek and Big Creek are, ideally, you can't have a fishery to yourself, and you certainly don't want it overcrowded with people. And there's bad actors that come out in every fishery, but it's good to know that, talking a little bit about public access, and I've subscribed to the Onyx application there for hunting. I don't get to hunt every year, but when I draw tags, I just think that Onyx app is the next best thing to slice bread, and it shows it's a very accurate, to my knowledge, about what public access is available to anglers on each of these riverside systems, from the Clascanine to Nickanagan River to Gnat Creek. And I know there's a lot of private land on Big Creek, but it seems like Gnat Creek has a pretty open public access area there for bank anglers.
Oh yeah. Gnat Creek is, you can fish all the way from the falls, which I think is, you can't fish above. I think from the falls all the way down to the slough, it's all public access. it's really neat but you got to put in the work though. You can't. I mean, there isn't a trail on the river. There isn't like a logging road that follows the creek at all. You got to just get your waders on and bust the brush, climb over log jams, cross the creek a couple times, and but you can access the whole thing and not have any issues. So worrying about any trespassing issues or anything. Big Creek, on the other hand, a little different. I think I want to say like, gosh, 80% of the bank fishing on Big Creek is from the Hatchery area, the legal area around the Hatchery, and then Big Creek Park down kind of by Highway 30 there is another spot. And then there's a few spots kind of right down towards the mouth a little bit more. But that's about it there. But Gnat Creek, the whole thing's wide open, just as much as you're willing to hike around. And I like to hike. I'll hike from here to the campground. That's a good hike, fish some water down there. And then there's from the campground down to, there's like another big pull out between kind of about a half a mile down below the campground. There's a big pull out there, and you can like hike to there. And then from that pull out, then you can go all the way down to where it starts into tidewater. There's like they used to have an old weir down there. We used to collect fish. And so you can access that too. And then all the tidewater is open, and it's it's a challenging creek to fish too. It's small little runs, little buckets where you can, your bobber you cast your bobber in and it's out of the drift, like just like that, so it's really very challenging. We don't get, for winter steelhead, you don't get a huge return of fish every year. So when you do catch fish here, it's really rewarding. That's for sure.
Well, it's so easy to get excited about spring Chinook. I don't want to spend the rest of our valued time on that, especially since it's winter steelhead season. But
right.
I maybe we can have you back for another webinar as we get into the spring season. But if we could talk more about steelhead, you mentioned the falls, which I assume are a little upstream of the hatchery there. Where's the falls located at?
It's about like 500 from the hatchery parking lot. It's about 500 yards just up here. There's a nice little trail. Tourists like to hike up there and take pictures and stuff. And then from there down, most of the people, if you come fish, you get a lot of people park down here across from the highway. You can see a couple pullouts there. And, spring Chinook season, you come here during the peak of the run, there'll be cars parked all from the hatchery all the way down along the highway, all the way down. So there's a trail that goes from here down to the campground, and there's a spot where the trail crosses the highway just right below the hatchery here. And so there's a little pull out there where guys can park there and go down. And there's a few little access points. The trail that goes from the hatchery down to the campground, it hits the creek a couple times, but most of it's away from the creek. So I'll go down and there's a couple points where I'll hit I can hike down to the campground and get back up on the trail on those points. I have to hike around again, maybe cross the creek a few times and get back up on the trail. So there's some access there, but below the campground, it's all busting the brush. There's some old, fisherman trails or something like, I don't know, some guys take machetes down there, bust some brush and make trails and stuff like that. So, things like that. It's not like when I worked at North Fork, Nehalem, it was put the barn boots on after work, walk down to the waterfall hole there, and fish that hatchery area, and you'd have, a couple 100 yards of good water to fish, but here it's a little different. So you got to really work for them. So.
Well, we shouldn't be afraid to do that. That's what we all did in the good old days. So
yeah.
A little harder for an old guy like me that's got 40 pounds too much on his carcass that fishes out of a boat all day. But I might be inspired to try that this year. So, well,
yeah.
As far as that winter steelhead run goes, you said we reported in the guides forecast a couple of weeks ago that you had a little push of fish there, and it sounds like when I texted you last week for last week's report that you kind of had a little bit of a lull. But how's the run shaping up so far there at Gnat Creek for steelhead?
I haven't fished it yet. I know just talking to some of the guys fishing this weekend, Thanksgiving's a traditional kickoff for winter steelhead, the early run of steelhead, which we get here. And I haven't just seen. I know. Like I said, last week there was Big Creek. There was some fish in the trap. Guys caught fish. I know a couple of fish are caught here last week, but I haven't seen. I don't know. I went down there this morning. I thought I saw a couple of fish in one of the runs down here, right below the hatchery this morning. I saw a couple of fish, kind of one of the runs in the tail out, but I couldn't really tell if they were coho or steelhead. They kind of like the one I thought was a steelhead. Couple of fish I saw were definitely coho still. So. Um, the water was kind of dark, was kind of murky this morning. It was kind of not as light out, so I really couldn't tell. But so there's definitely fish here. There's definitely steelhead in these creeks for sure.
And I
Just not the big numbers yet.
Sure, and I put together a matrix there that our readers see for the districts, early season and late season systems on the North Coast. You know, Big Creek, Gnat Creek, Clascanine River, Nicanicum, of course, North Fork, Nehalem, of course. I think Three Rivers may still get some early season fish. I don't know if you can answer that. It used to be a big run of early season steelhead there, but I know
I
they've,
know. I think they do.
yeah,
It's hard to say. You'd have to talk to those guys. I know. I know they definitely get wild brood stock that later run. I'm not
yeah,
sure if they keep that traditional one going or not. I'm not sure.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
so I have defined kind of peak season for those early season systems as December 10th, which was one of the best early season steelhead days I had on Mechanicsburg River many years ago. I have it as December 10th to July 10th, but uh, I assume that that's probably still accurate. What would you call the peak for Nat Creek right there, and maybe Creek and
Um,
Claston?
it's just like anywhere. I feel like it's from Christmas to New Year's. That from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, those that seems to be kind of the peak to me.
Yeah,
Really, and then every year is different. When I worked at the North Fork, Nehalem, we'd get some years we get fish clear into like early February and stuff, and then other years it'd be like January, middle of January, it'd be done. It was like you get a big run of fish, and it was like I guess that you get a good fresh hit or something. You go work the trap the next week. It's like, oh, there's like two or three in the trap. I guess the run's over. So every year is different. Yeah, I've seen it here the same thing too. I mean, I've seen it where the run like last year. It seemed like the fit from now through the first 2 weeks of December, we had fish, and then that was it. It seemed like we got a big push. A lot of fish came in, and then it was it for the year. It seemed like couldn't find a fish down there. So it just changes every year. Yeah, I mean,
interesting.
it probably depends on the rain, but how much rain we get, things like that, what river levels and stuff. If you get 3 weeks of low water and stuff like that, I mean, you're gonna get, it's gonna be those fish are gonna push up till you get the rain again. So,
Yeah.
um, so it just changes every year.
Yeah, and I've often written that, of course, those small systems are going to fish best just after a high water event, of course. And I imagine that's the same thing there. But those fish will still just kind of trickle in and make their way up slow. I mean, there's got to be some advantages to fishing low, clear water. Is one you can, figure out, understand, and even spot where those fish are hanging to target them that way. But you spend enough time in that hatchery. Do you concur that high water is definitely the best, or are you effective with
Yeah.
those low water strategies too?
Um, you know, well, definitely. Well, the one thing about Gnat Creek, I will say, is that another unique thing to the creek is that when you get like, we all, steelhead fishing, we all get down to the river, and it's, how many times we got down there, and it's like river's blowing out or something. You drive 2 hours or whatever, you get up at 3 a.m. You get down the river and it's blowing out. But Gnat Creek, it'll be. I've seen it blowing out, and it'll clear up overnight. Like, I mean, it'll be the next day. Every system in the state's blowing out, and Brown and High Gnat Creek will be fishable. So that's really unique to Gnat Creek as well. Big Creek same way. Well, Big Creek takes another day or two to clear up, but Gnat Creek's the quickest one to clear up, and so you'll see a lot of guys down here about over the years be like, oh yeah, we started out on the North Fork, or we started on the Wilson, or we started down at the Tillamook, and everything was blowing out, so we came up here and caught fish. So that's really unique to here too. Yeah, we at least have guys have opportunities where other places, rivers blowing out too high, unsafe to fish, and so you can come down here and have success, which is really unique to here. and as far as low clear water, I don't, I think if you were a guys were to go down to start maybe down below the campground, get like lower in the system, that you'll find fish down. I think that's what you got to do. And those steelhead, we know as steelheads, we know those fish. They don't need, it isn't like fall fish or anything like that. Those things will come up no matter what. Good high tide or whatever, and they'll don't matter what. It doesn't matter what the water conditions are. And as far as steelhead fishing goes, I mean, same thing. We all know that you can fish steelhead every day of the season. You just got to adapt to the conditions. That's the biggest key to successful steelhead fishing, in my opinion. See guys come down here, water's low and clear. They're running like high vis line and big baits and stuff, or and then we got high water. You got guys coming down with small presentations and light line and stuff like that. So you just got to kind of match the conditions, basically. I mean, they're there all the time. So
well, it's fortunate you're a sport angler as well. What is you find your most successful strategy and technique is for Gnat Creek steelhead, winter steelhead?
I take a bobber rod, like a bobber, and of course beads have kind of taken over the, steelheading, by storm. And so, basically a rod with a bobber and bead. And then I bring like the old school drift. I still do the old school drift fishing. I still like doing that. And so I just bring those two rods, a little yarn ball and eggs or something like that, drift fish like a little run. So, like I said, some of these little buckets are really that bobber. You cast that bobber in there, and it just it'll go, just fly right by them. You guys get that. Like I said, it's a tough creek to fish, so it's really technical. And I feel like if we bring a drift rod, some of those spots I can kind of get down there quicker and kind of hit the bottom and work that run where that bobber is just kind of, it isn't like on the Wilson or something like that, those bigger systems where that bobber is just going to drift nicely through the entire run and stuff. Or this is just a quick little slot that you got to get down into, and so I'll just run I'll run both, just depends on what's going on. And then a lot of times when the water's really high, and even when it's brown, you can go down here and still, some of those tailouts and stuff, it's such a small little section of river, you can still get away with, fishing, like on the Wilson, if the river's brown, it's like, I mean, that's a 3,000 CFS going through, or Gnat Creek's brown and blowing out, you got like, 500. So, you can fish your normal techniques you would on the Wilson.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So you can still get away with that. So you can get away with fishing those techniques there. So
awesome. Great. Well, super. Maybe we just kind of button this conversation up. You gave a hint earlier that you guys get about 40,000, you plant about 40,000 smolts there. 1% return might indicate 400 returning adults if my math's right, which often it is not. But how big is that run in Gnat Creek, do you imagine?
Oh gosh, I've always in my head, we've always kind of wondered what the numbers were. The numbers are. We have an outlet. We have a distribution box where the outflow from the fish ponds, where before it hits the creek, there's this cement like kind of a box that's down there, and fish they'll go up into it. They'll jump up into it, think it's like like a trap or something, and kind of get an idea. We'll get fish. We'll get up and go down there and we'll see 3 or 4 fish in there some mornings or whatever. But I don't know. It's hard. It's so hard to say. But Big Creek, they'll get some years they'll get 600 to 1,000, 1,400 fish back. The 60,000 smolt release. We don't have a trap here again, so it's so hard to gauge. I don't know. I'd like to know though. I wish they kind of need to see on a normal year how many fish come back. Steelhead, like I say, we don't have traps, so whatever comes into the creek, they get harvested. I don't know. I wouldn't even want to take a stab at it, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, 100 to 300, 400 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, that's great. It's a testament to the uniqueness of the scenario that's happened there. As we can see out your back window, I mean, it's such a beautiful reach of Highway 30 to drive through. It just seems like I know there's elk all over the place. There's deer in there, of course. It's well, I mean, what a unique place for anglers to go try their luck, in kind of a, I wouldn't call it necessarily a wilderness setting, but just a really a natural setting for anglers to get a chance to get a steelhead or a spring chinook, which again we'll talk about at a later time. But sure appreciate you taking the time with us, and our readers, I'm sure, will be very interested in what you have to say. Do you have anything else to add about your unique little fisheries? We didn't really cover the other fisheries like the Clascanine. You talked quite a bit about Big Creek, and a little bit about Mechanicum. Mechanicum has always been my favorite. Steelhead River, it's really hard to float right now because of the log jams that exist on it. But you have any suggestions that you want to leave our readers with as far as early season steelheading? This is why we really want to talk to you, Mike, was to get some tips on early season steelheading in the North Coast. And just from my own personal perspective, as I laid out that matrix, I found it maybe not so coincidental. I don't know if this was necessarily planned by the department, but it seems too coincidental not to have been planned. But those early season systems seem to be the ones that are smaller in stature, giving bank anglers better opportunity for early season steelhead. A lot of the bigger systems get blown out this time of year, and so they don't make for very efficient early season opportunities for people. But just maybe cherry on the top situation, what would you give as far as advice to our readers of the guides forecast about how to be successful in early season steelheading?
Just like we talked about, I mean, I grew up steelhead fishing, when I grew up down in Salem. So we used to fish the rivers, that early run of steelhead, Christmas, morning, Super Bowl, like it was always a tradition to fish steelhead on Thanksgiving, go down to Stucca there and catch steelhead on Three Rivers and on Thanksgiving or that week after Thanksgiving. And so we're very fortunate, I feel like, to still have that, these early runs and still have that traditional, early steelhead fishery. Like I think we've all used to, we used to partake in, and now it's kind of gotten the broodstock programs over the years, which is awesome. I mean, it was just phenomenal programs. We all know they're like probably the biggest success we have in our fisheries. And so, but to still have this early traditional run of steelhead is really cool to have. And I think like you nailed it on the head too, like the smaller streams, you can get out and bank fish. So kind of keeping that tradition alive, I think, more or less. And, and so you have the Mechanica, North Fork, Nehalem. Of course, North Fork, Nehalem now gets the wild. I don't know if you knew that they started a wild broodstock program. I don't know if you knew that.
I did
Kind
know
of
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So not a big run, but so we still have those opportunities. And so I just encourage people to take advantage of it. I mean, it's where we all kind of cut our teeth steelhead fishing, I mean, up in the winter on the coast, coming down and Thanksgiving or getting your Christmas presents and going down and you're putting your new waders on, and stuff, and coming down fishing North Fork, going to the hatchery and, going to some hatchery areas and hiking down and fishing and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's still not, I know none of these wild broodstock programs get these huge, accolades like then they should, I mean, obviously for huge reasons, but yeah, don't overlook these early steelhead fisheries. I mean, they're still here, and we don't instead of sitting at home watching football, you can go out there and catch some steelhead. So
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, as always, I think we got it pretty good in Oregon with ODF&W. My opinion being a little bit biased because I used to work for the agency and I have great respect for the people that do. So thanks for taking the time, and we'll be back in touch with some other conversations with you in the future if that's okay. And
yeah,
appreciate the work you're doing, and we'll continue to ping you for up-to-date information on Gnat Creek fishing. You have your thumb somewhat on the pulse of the Big Creek fishery too. So I couldn't help but when you said break out the new waders there, is that I was a stream surveyor also on the Nehalem system. Again, this is like 40 years ago, and I just was realizing like, man, we had to be pretty careful. I mean, we got a lot of exercise in our waders 5 times a day about ripping waders and stuff. If you're talking about crawling over trees, how about a recommendation for waders that are durable? I mean, maybe you don't wear neoprene if you're doing a lot of hiking. What kind of waders are you running down there on Gnat Creek?
oh man, you know how it is. I mean, you could spend get Patagonia or Sims and spend $600-700 or whatever and get really expensive ones, or you can go to Bimart and get the cheap waders or whatever. I personally like, I got Sims. I've been having Sims waders for years and years. I mean, I still have a pair of Sims that I bought in 2007 that are still going strong. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
There's, I mean, that I, after I just, so, I mean, but you're going to spend the money for them, so,
Yeah.
it isn't like, you're definitely going to beat up your gear hiking Gnat Creek for sure.
Yeah.
And like you talked about earlier, I mean, it is not a wilderness setting, but I mean, you go down there and it's something, you're hiking through canyons down here, you get down to the canyon and forest. It's like you're fishing like, before, how it used to be, basically how it should be, log jams and trees across the river and, things like that. Just, it's just more of a natural stream, probably the most natural type of stream I've ever fished. It's, you get, log jams and, you just don't see that in a lot of places, big old growth forests. And, so
Yeah.
and it changes a lot every year too, like, one year, like, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years ago, there's this run down here I'd hike down there. I'd quickly get off work, run down there, and it was a deep hole, and it held fish that whole year. I mean, it was every night I went down there, I got a limit of steelhead every night, just fish, and for about a couple weeks there. And then the next year we had a huge high water event, and it completely filled that hole in, and it's like, oh man. So then that's kind of what it's like here too. You'll fish a spot, it'll be like a log jam in a deep pocket or something that you've been catching fish out of. A year later, 2 years later, it's completely gone, blown back out, filled in or something. So it's got to relearn it every year, it seems like. So,
Yeah.
not like the Wilson where they go to the Josie hole or something like that, or some of those spots are traditional, the same thing every year after year, and so you got to. So that's kind of a frustrating part about it, but keeps you
Well,
on your toes.
kind of reminds me when we had a summer steelhead program up on Mount Hood, and I didn't learn till later in my career. It was kind of a somewhat of a kept secret that ODF&W was also planning summer steelhead in the zigzag up there, tributary to the salmon or to the Sandy, I guess. And boy, that small stream steelheading on the zigzag was impressive, and it was work, So
Yeah.
anglers shouldn't be afraid to work for their fish, and cool that we have the opportunity we do on Gnat Creek. So
Yeah,
if people,
fish in all these streams. I mean, when I was at North Fork, I mean, my guys were telling me used to work there. I mean, they were putting fish in, like, I mean, Lost Creek up on the north on the main Nehalem, and all kinds of, and every little stream that Dairy Creek. I mean, every little stream that had steelhead, they used to dump them into. Smolts. This facility actually used to raise steelhead for the entire. I mean, for the whole, I think, western part of the Oregon. They used to release fish all over steelhead all over the place. So.
wow.
So yeah, so we're fortunate to have what we have left. So
Yeah. Well, we'll keep fighting for it. I'm going to try and have some conversations with the agency about what we can do to keep our hatchery system propped up, let alone how to improve it. So we've got some discussions in the queue with headquarters there about that. But again, appreciate the work that you do. And thanks for taking the time to talk with us and the readers of the Guides Forecast about what the program is there on the North Coast.
yeah, no problem. Thanks, Bob.
All right. Talk to you again soon.
All right.